Nothing says you're more serious about gardening than building your own garden bed. If gardening's an art form, then think of the raised bed as the canvas. You can get as fancy and expensive as you want, but like art, the canvas is best left sturdy and functional, while the plants themselves create the magic. With that in mind, let's get back to basics and break down a simple yet elegant vegetable garden bed design to help you create your own masterpieces this summer. The benefit, and I would say the main benefit of building your own garden bed from scratch, is that you can build it any size you want. Not every space we have available is the cookie cutter dimensions of a store-bought garden bed. With that said, there is a couple of hard rules that I like to follow when I'm building my own. Not that it really matters for this fall rye cover crop, but the first rule is height. All of my garden beds are open bottom, except for the patio ones, and as such, height isn't really a huge issue because the plants can simply have access to the earth below. However, for me, the whole point of a raised garden bed is accessibility. So I like to make mine at least a foot tall to make my gardening life as easy as possible. Second consideration is width. There's a limit to how far you can reach for both planting and harvesting, as well as weeding. So I adhere to the strict width guidelines of 4 feet wide if I have access to all sides, and 2 feet wide if I only have access to one. Any wider than that, and your typical gardening tasks become way too hard and way too cumbersome. Lastly, we have the overall length of the bed. I'll cap this at 8 feet for 2 reasons. 1, dimensional lumber comes in 8 feet lengths. Yes, you can buy oversized boards, but your cost per linear foot goes way up. And because of the times, wood prices are already astronomical. And 2, the soil inside the bed is heavy, and it's always putting extreme pressure on the sides at all times. If you go too long, even with bracing, you run the risk of serious bowing on the long sides. Not ideal aesthetically or structurally. Knowing those things and knowing the space that I want filled today, I'm gonna build 6 1.5 by 8 foot raised beds. To achieve that desired height of over 12 inches, I'm gonna use an array of 2x6s and 2x4s stacked to make that happen. The first thing we do is to draw out the design. Let me show you what that looks like so that you can put in your dimensions after, any dimensions you want, to build any size garden bed you want. The beauty of building 8 foot long beds is that all of your long side boards can be left untouched. Since only the side pieces are cut, calculating just how much lumber you need is a cinch. If we want an 18-inch wide bed, we have to remember that dimensional lumber is not the size that it's advertised. For example, a 2x4 is actually 1.5 by 3.5 inches, and a 2x6 is actually 1.5 by 5.5 inches. With our dimensions figured out, let's go ahead and make our cuts. Measure twice, but cut once. Once you cut one end piece, of which there are 6 total for each bed in this design, use that first one that you cut as a template to cut all the remaining pieces. It goes by infinitely faster this way. I'm going to be staining just the middle boards in these beds to create a unique look. I'll do that now. However, there's 2 things when staining a veggie bed that you gotta know. First, make sure to use a water-based, safe stain whenever you're working with lumber that's gonna be used to create food. And second, always sand down any wood prior to staining, especially outdoor wood. You need to allow that stain to penetrate deeper and more evenly. Without proper sanding first, that stain's gonna come out blotchy, uneven, and it likely won't even last the season. Check out the difference here. Okay, with our middle sections of the bed all drying nicely in the sun, let's go ahead and assemble that first layer of the bed to act as a base. This is where I want to demonstrate that building a good veggie garden bed is more than just slapping 4 boards together. You can definitely do that, and you'll have a garden bed that lasts at least a couple of years. But beyond that, when that bed starts to fall apart, you'll be kicking yourself for not doing things differently. You see, when using screws, and especially nails, we have 2 kinds of forces holding that bed together. Or more accurately, trying to pull it apart. First, we have pull force, which is literally the nails or screws pulling themselves out of the wood. The resistance that those nail or screws have is literally how strong that bed's gonna be. And the second is shear force, which is how much can the screw or nail withstand before it literally breaks in half. Shear force is magnitude stronger than pull force, as evident by this bed here. So if shear force is what we're after, let's assemble the base to reflect that. Instead of just screwing all 4 sides together and having to deal with these beds again in 1 or 2 seasons, let's inset a 2x4 the exact width of our lumber on the corners of the long sides. Sounds confusing? Let me show you what I mean. No need to clamp here, just butt up the wood to the side and screw that 2x4 into place. I cut those 2x4 braces to 1 inch less than the height of the bed. This way, they'll be buried by the soil and you won't be able to see them. Okay, with all those corner braces screwed in, we can actually assemble the full bottom section of the bed. It's really easy stuff, and all you need is a cordless screwdriver. If we measured and cut correctly, those side pieces fit in perfectly. Dimensional lumber, especially the longer pieces like this 8-foot one, sometimes can twist or even bend. Luckily, wood is quite malleable and easy to work with, so just kind of put your weight on it to square things up. It's a solid base, and from here on out, it's really easy to assemble the rest of this bed. So let's go check on those stained middle pieces. Looking good. A second coat won't hurt if you have the time, but as long as you sand it first, that stain should set in really well. I fit the end sections in first, as it makes lining up those long pieces far easier. Good stuff. Everything fits together really easy. However, and I always forget this, if you're making a skinny bed, sometimes it's really hard to get that screwdriver into the inside of the bed to secure those pieces. The whole benefit of this design is that you don't have to see the screws or nails or screw holes or any blemishes whatsoever on the front face of that bed. It's fine for a 2-foot wide bed. You can get that screwdriver in there and zap in those boards from the inside. But on a skinny bed like this, you got 2 options. You can either assemble the long panels all at once, or you can deal with screw holes on the outside. I should also note, on the left side middle section, you can see that it's not lined up perfectly. That's by design. I cut that middle piece just a little bit short, 1/2 inch on either side. This is for future installation of the irrigation, so do note, it was intentional and it's not really a design of the bed. On a normal raised bed, we'd be pretty much done right now. But on these long pieces, I like to do something a little extra. And you'll notice that we had 4 extra pieces of wood left over. Let me show you why. Whenever I go over 4 feet on one side of a bed, I always make sure to include braces on that long side. This is to prevent bowing and to really secure those layers of boards together so that no soil seeps out. It's easy stuff really, and they can be put on the inside or the outside. I like putting them on the outside because I feel like if I stain them like the middle section, it adds a little bit of aesthetic flair. That's it right there. The simplest of garden beds. Sturdy enough to last for years and subtle enough to let the plants do the talking. The easiest part is done. The hard part is fitting it into place and then filling it with soil. But hey, we'll save that for another video. But what we won't have to wait for is a recap of the main points. Building your own garden bed is not just for the intrinsic reward of being self-sufficient. You can get the right dimension for your space as well as adequate height to grow all the veggies you want. Remember, dimensional lumber is not as advertised, and the width and depth measurements are a ½ inch smaller. Use corner 2x4s as braces to have the bed rely on shear force rather than pull force, making it infinitely stronger and long-lasting. If staining, use a safe water-based stain with a low VOC content. Finally, use braces on the long sides every 32 inches for beds that are 8 feet or longer. Hey, if building your own garden beds are your thing, check out this herb planter that I built over here for less than $10 in 10 minutes.